Our question this time to walk with really centers on the need to find solid ground. Now, before we ask the question, it's important to understand, let's look at a mountain, even a small mountain. Now, when we see it from a distance, it stands out from the landscape, but it's actually connected to the earth. Now, as we get up close, it's actually hard to tell where the mountain stops and the earth begins. Well, this is very important because now if we apply this to us as human beings, as souls in bodies in time on earth, when we can stand solidly and be centered on solid ground, it's hard to tell where who we are stops and the foundation of life begins. And that's where we want to return and stand, because that gives us incredible strength. Now, throughout history, we have different names for that strength. Some people call that strength faith. I like to call it resilience. I like to call the moment when who I am is lined up with the very pulse of life, like that mountain connecting to the earth that holds it up. I like to call that resilience. So of course, being human, we don't stand in one place. We move around a lot. We're thrown off course. We're knocked down. We get up. So part of what we have to learn, each of us individually, how do we get up and find that place of solid ground? So our question today is, can you describe, and this is again in your journal or in your conversation with a friend or loved one, or simply as you're thinking, as you're walking, can you describe one solid thing you stand on when the weather of life stirs up its storms? Let's pause here for a moment. Look at trees, great big old trees. Now, in a storm, their limbs and the tops are swaying all over the place. Even some of the branches may break in a storm. But as you go down that trunk, their roots are gripped in the earth. Now, and unless it's a hurricane or a monsoon, it takes a lot to upend and unearth the roots of a tree. And likewise, while there are certain things that can happen to us as human beings that can pull up our roots, most of the time, if we're standing on solid ground, we may lose a few leaves and limbs and some small branches and twigs, and that may hurt, but our roots don't go anywhere. And that's why this is an important question. Can you describe one thing you stand on that's solid when the weather of life stirs up life's storms? So when things get rough, what do? How do you brace yourself? Now, what might this look like, as we talk about this? This might be, it might be to be in the company of someone you trust. It might be to listen to a piece of music that always returns you to your heart. It might be to walk to the top of a hill where you can see the ocean. It might be to go and have coffee with a friend who tells great stories and you just listen for hours. It could be any of these things. It might be the laughter. My wife has a great laugh. My wife has a laugh where we go in movie theaters and she laughs and everybody turns around and looks at her, and she feels a little self-conscious. And, I love her for that laugh. I can walk into a building and hear that laugh, and it makes me grounded and smile. So what's one thing that grounds you? So it's important to know this when there isn't a storm, so that when a storm comes along, you know where to stand.